Hey there, welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about psionics. Oh, the fantasy people are getting all up in arms here. So psionics is a very controversial subject, it seems. Some people do not like psionics in their fantasy. And psionics was actually introduced into Dungeons & Dragons right at the very beginning with, I think the 4th or 5th supplement. Somebody will correct me on that, but within the first few years of D&D, there was psionics. If you don't know what psionics are effectively mental abilities, right? So a lot of people think of them as just another kind of spellcasting, which is how I'm going to address this. Now, I think that an issue some people have with psionics is that if you play them by the book, the way that they were in OD&D and even in AD&D, they can create what we call an OP character, right? A character with psionics. This is an extra thing. Now, that's also partially a misunderstanding of the rules, but I'm not going to get into that. What I will say is, okay, sure. So you're a fighter and all of a sudden you roll really well and you have psionics. So now you have these like magical abilities that are different than spells that oftentimes you can use more than once a day. It just creates this other thing and people just don't like it for that reason. Other people don't like it for the reasons I said, because they think that it's too sci-fi and they want only fantasy. I would debate that mental powers is only sci-fi and not fantasy, especially if you look at sword and sorcery fantasy, which a lot of D&D is, based on initially. So in any case, I'm a fan of psionics, and I had found this rough idea for psionics. This is before I got into running OD&D, and I decided to make my own version of psionics for a basic system. So I'm more in favor of psionics being an additional power, but because my group wanted it to be a class, I decided to make it, and I'm going to go through this document here that I created for my group. It's based on another system, which I will show you. It is a class, and then at the end, we'll go over being able to use it as an individual kind of add-on. All this being said, I've been running original Dungeons & Dragons and using that psionic system, or planning on it, so we'll see how I like that versus this, but this has been play tested for about a year, and we had a lot of good results with it. So let me jump over here, and we'll take a look. So this is the Scion, which is a psionics class for BXD&D. This is a beta version 1.1. And we can see it's based on Mindbenders by Ramanan. Now I put a link here. If you want to follow this link to save versus totalpartykill.ca, there's tons of stuff there. I'll put a link in the description as well. And if you go to like the archive section or the additional stuff, he's got the link to this blog post. His blog post has some of the basic stuff, but it doesn't go super far into it. It kind of is rough, and it's called something like a beginning thing. So I really added a lot to it, but check out that so you can kind of see where it came from. All right, here we go. I even say I really love the simplicity of this version of Psionics, so I decided to finish it and make it some tweaks to make it for my BX game, because again, it was originally written for OD&D. So the basic concept is a new PC class, the Scion, dedicated to the study and master of the mind. Optional, all PZs either have a wild talent or resistance to psionics. So we have a progress table, just like you normally would. It basically progress as magic users. They are different though, okay? Because I did not want this to just be another kind of magic. So they use psionic points or psi points. This allows them to cast or use their psionic powers. Save an attack as magic users, but can use any weapon and leather armor, can use shields. So they're kind of somewhere in the middle. They're a little tougher than a magic user in that sense, but their abilities aren't quite as reliable. And charisma is their prime requisite. Okay, so gaining psionic disciplines. A new Scion starts with a psi score of 0 in all psionic disciplines. Psi scores have a rating of 0 to 6. In order to have access to a discipline, the Scion must dedicate psi points. This is called opening your mind. When a Scion decides to open their mind to a new discipline, they must devote 2 psionic points to gain a psi score of 1 in that discipline. Once their mind has been opened to the discipline, each additional psi point dedicated to increase the Scion's psi point by 1 to a maximum of 6. Thus, a first level Scion with 4 PP could open their mind to 2 disciplines, giving each a psi score of 1, or she could fully devote all psi points to 1 discipline, giving a psi score of 3. Okay, so this is basically how you get your powers. And at each level, of course, we saw earlier, you get 4 to start with at first level, and you get 2 more at second level, and you get 3 more at third level, etc., etc. I tried to balance it so that it would work out the same way magic users do, so they get a little bit of power as they go. All right, so using psionic disciplines. In order to use a discipline, the Scion must roll a d6 to activate it. This is called the power roll. On a roll of equal to or less than the Scion's psi score for that discipline, activation is successful. On a roll of a 1, the discipline is activated, but it's exhausted for the day and cannot be used again until after a good night's rest, 8 full hours. If the power roll is unsuccessful, a Scion can attempt to activate it again the next round. A character can choose to forego the power roll and just take a 1, which will activate and exhaust the power for the day. Add a power roll of 1. Okay, so there's a note here that says, although having psi score of 6 guarantees successful activation, they still have to roll because they might get a 1 and exhaust it for the day. So the practical application here is that if you have a Scion at first level, they take 2 abilities, each add a psi of 1. They would just take a 1 when they want to activate it because they're going to lose it as soon as they do. If they took a 3, though, in that 1 talent, they could roll a d6, and if they rolled a 1, they wouldn't be able to use it again for the rest of the day, but it would still work. If they rolled a 2 or 3, it'll work, and they could use it again. And if they rolled a 4, 5, or 6, it just wouldn't work. They waste their turn effectively trying to activate it. This I wanted to do because I like the idea of when you read about people using psionics and stuff in novels and see them on TV, they're always like, I'm trying to make it work kind of thing. It doesn't just work like magic. I like magic that just works. I like psionics to be, they got to work it. All right, concentration. Where applicable, once activated, a Scion may concentrate on discipline for 1 turn per level. A Scion may only concentrate on 1 discipline at a time. If the Scion is injured, they may save versus paralyzation or lose concentration. So some of the disciplines, as we'll see, you can keep going over time. Pushing. If a Scion wants to activate a higher result in an ability, they can continue to roll each round pushing their ability. Add the new roll to the current power roll and increase the result. Any roll over the psi score interrupts pushing and a new attempt must be made. A roll of 1 when pushing activates the discipline at the current total and exhausts the ability for the day. Not all disciplines may be pushed. Those that can will state so in their description. No effect takes place until the Scion is finished pushing and accepts the power roll. If the initial activation roll is 1, they cannot be pushed. When the power lists multiple results, the Scion can choose any result to equal to or less than the power roll, as long as the roll indicates activation. Thus, a Scion rolling a 4 on mental assault can choose mind thrust, internal struggle, megalomania, or inferior ego. We'll get into that in a second, but that's basically the 4 different things you get, right? Level 1 activation, level 2 activation, 3 and 4. In combat, Scions go before movement, but the Scion cannot move and activate in the same round. Again, this kind of mirrors how AD&D works. Psionics go before everything else. Obviously, if you're surprised, you won't be able to do it. A Scion may move and attack and concentrate on a power, however, if they take damage while doing so, they can lose it. Unless noted otherwise, the range of any attack discipline is 3 inches plus 1 inch per level, and of course, inches being 10 feet or 10 yards, depending on if you're inside or outside. Okay, so what this means is, again, my first level Scion can, if they've taken 2 abilities at 1, when they go to activate it, they can automatically activate, but they lose it for the day, and it'll be at level 1, which is the lowest power of that thing. They can't push the roll, they can't try to get more power, etc., they just use it. So that's one option, right? You can choose to have a Scion that just can activate 2 things a day, and they're good. If they put it all in 1 and they have a 3, and let's say they rolled a 2, and they're like, oh man, I really wanted a 3 or 4, they can roll again. And if they get a 1, then it's a 3 now, and it activates and they lose it for the day. If they get another 2, now it's 4. They can either stop, or they can go, I'm going to roll again. And they can keep doing that to keep build the power roll up. So, but nothing happens until they do it. So it's that idea of the Psionic, like, I'm trying to get it, pushing the roll as far as they can go. Okay, so here are the powers. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I'll just give you kind of an overview of how it works on a couple of the levels, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I'm going to go through telekinesis just to give you an idea of how the 6 levels of it work, and you'll get the feel for the rest of them as we go through. I'll just kind of talk about them a little bit. So telekinesis, right? Very simple. It's a common psychic ability. It can be pushed. Results 1 through 4 may be concentrated on. So we'll see what the results are, but basically some of them you can keep going if you just keep concentrating. Level 1. So if they rolled a 1, or they took a 1, or they took anything else and chose to take 1. Move objects up to 25 pounds multiplied by the power roll can be moved in any direction at a speed of the power roll inches per round. So if the Scion wants to lift something and they have a 1, they can lift up to 25 pounds and it'll move 1 inch, which is 10 feet or 10 yards per round. They can concentrate on it. So as long as nobody hits them, they can just keep it going until they can't any longer. Throw object. So now that's moving an object slowly. Now we're throwing an object. Up to 0.5 pounds multiplied by the PR. Range, object to target, 20 feet, d6 damage, save versus breath to avoid. So basically now you've got a thing where you can whip things at somebody, right? That's again a classic psionic ability. They can throw small objects, a dagger, right? 0.5 feet by the PR range, right? Of 20 feet. So up to 20 feet away, they can throw it. It does a d6 damage, but the person gets a save versus breath to avoid. So you might be thinking, well, a dagger only does d4, and they don't have to make a 2-hit roll. Well, no, but it's a saving throw. Okay. And again, they can concentrate on that, which means they can keep throwing stuff each round until they get hit. Hold person. Okay. Creatures of PR plus Scion level hit dice total are held motionless while the Scion concentrate. So again, this is if they had rolled a 3 here, which is what they'd have to roll, and they were first level, up to 4 hit dice could be held because I got the 3 plus 1 for the first level Scion. But they must concentrate. It affects the lowest hit dice first, unless they target a specific target and they get a save versus magic, but the save is made worse by the PR. So basically they got to take a penalty to their roll. Levitate at the speed equal to PR inches per round. Telekinetic blast. So again, this is not one that can be concentrated on. Scion blast, sonic blast of energy, dealing PR d6 damage. So in other words, at least 5d6 damage to one creature. Compare the power roll to defending creature's hit die. If it's greater than addition to damage, the save versus paralyzed will be knocked backwards. If it's equal, they take the damage. If it's less, they're entitled to a saving throw versus spells for half damage. So again, this is a powerful thing. And theoretically, if you're a first level Scion and you put enough points into it, you could get this by pushing the roll. So it does allow for a very powerful character, but it's risky. All right, massive attack. Cords of psionic energy deal 66 damage to each enemy and a 50-foot radius around the Scion. They get a save or be knocked backwards. If they have a greater than 6 hit dice, they get a save for half damage. So that's crazy powerful, massive attack. So you've got this person, and again, in theory, a first level Scion could have 3 points. They could roll a 3, push the roll another 3. Now they've got 6 and they can do this terrible, terrible damage. But if they roll a 3 and they push the roll and then they roll a 5, they got to start over. If they roll a 3 and they push the roll and they get a 1, they lose it for the day and they've got to go levitate as the best they can do. So this is effectively how it works out. It's a risk/reward system. And that's telekinesis. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll read the different abilities and they'll give you a breakdown, but I'm not going to do each part of it. So let's take a look. We got telepathy, which allows things like know motive, influence thoughts, empathy, ESP, communicate, and mind control. There's an object reading or object aura. There's mental assault, which is like your psionic combat, like you might have in other systems. There's remote viewing, so you can do things like clairvoyance or communicate spiritual projection and ESP. There's precognition, which allows the character to basically get some bonuses on future rolls and stuff. A cell adjustment, which is like healing, dream traveling, channeling, claircognizance, which allows them to like get a power from somebody else, which is really fun. And pyrokinesis, which I added after we playtested. So pyrokinesis has not truly been playtested, but it's basically just some fire attacks. Okay, so wild talents are something we're going to use if there's a Scion class. Everybody who's not a Scion rolls on this chart to see if they have a wild talent. Wild talents. If a character isn't playing a Scion, they still may have some latent psionic power. The player should roll under their wisdom score on a d20 to determine if their character has a wild psionic talent. If the PC fails the roll, the character has no wild talent. Instead, they gain a bonus to all saving throws when targeted by a psionic power equal to the amount they failed divided by 2 rounded down. So in other words, if you had a wisdom of 12 and you rolled a 14, that's 2, you failed by 2. So you divide that by half, that makes 1. So you'll always get a bonus to your saving throw of 1, a bonus of +1 against psionic attacks forever. Like that's just a skill. If they succeed, the amount they succeed by determines their wild talent as follows. So again, if they have a 12 and they roll a 11, they succeeded by 1. So in that case, they'd have far hearing. For 1 turn, the character hears all sounds within 50 feet as if they were being whispered directly into their ear. If it had been the 2, far seeing. For 1 turn, they can view scenes up to 50 feet away. Then you've got thought projection, object projection, telekinetic grasp, spark. Now, again, these get more and more powerful as the number goes up. So let's say you had an 18 wisdom and you rolled like a 6, right? So you survived by 12. When we cut over here, you're looking at psychic distress. All sentient characters, friend or foe, within 5 feet per level of the character are immobilized for 1 turn. Creatures with more hit dice gain a save versus magic. More hit dice than the the Scion, or the person doing the Psionic power. Really, really powerful, but not easy to get, right? You'd have to have a tremendously high wisdom and roll tremendously low. So, and there is also a 0, so if you roll exactly it, no direction, you know which way is north. Simple, right? So they can use the psychic talents once per day. There's a couple of them that are kind of constantly on that give bonuses. Those are stated in the description. And of course, if you have the bonus saving throw because you didn't get a psychic power, that's all the time as well. As I mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of the Scion being a class. I did that because that's what my players wanted. And when you're making a campaign of session 0 and all that, it's good to work around what people want. But I developed this into something that could be used when there's no Scion class. And I think that if I'm going to use it again in a BX game or whatever, this might be my preference. I would love to know in the comments below what your preference is, whether it be a class or a add-on. But let's look at it first. Psionics not based on a class. Determining psychic potential. To determine if your PC has psionic potential, follow the below formula. Intelligence -12 plus charisma -12 plus wisdom -12 equals psionic potential. Again, if you had an intelligence that was like 18, that'd be 6. But if you had a charisma that was 6, that would zero that out, right? So it kind of balances out this whole thing. At the character creation, you roll a d20. Any score equal to or below your psionic potential indicates you have a roll on the table below to determine your starting psionic talent. Okay, and you get this starting talent. This is a d12 table. One of them is roll twice. And I have an example here. Let's say we're creating a fighter named Kara. She has the following stats. Intelligence 14, charisma 17, wisdom 10. Her total psi is 5, right? Because she gets 2 for the intelligence, 5 for the charisma, which is 7, minus 2 for the wisdom. The player rolls a d20 and scores a 3. Kara is psychic. Rolling a d12, she rolls an 8, and she has the discipline dream travel. Okay, so after this is pretty much a variation of whatever I talked about. They rolled activate it the exact same way. But in this case, when they get the power they start at 1, right? However, they can increase them as they go. So most of the rest of how it's used is the same, but there are some changes. So of course, you start with that 1 discipline at a level of 1 and it activates and stuff the same way. But when you want to raise the abilities, it's a little different. Increasing psi scores and gaining additional psionic abilities. Upon achieving a new level, a character with psychic potential may roll a number of d20s equal to their new level. So if they go to second level, they roll 2d20. Third level, they roll 3d20, 4d20, 4th, etc. For each roll that is equal to or under the character's potential, they may roll once on the talent table or add 1 to a talent they already have, so they can choose that. If any of these test rolls results in a natural 20, the Scion has a breakdown and immediately permanently loses 1d6 points of intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. Roll randomly to see what's affected. So again, when you go up level, the higher you go up, the more powers you're gaining, but the more power you gain, the more chance you have of having a breakdown. So again, a risk reward. This is very important in all the stuff that I create. Now, what's important here is that the character may roll a number of dice. That means you don't have to. If you get to like 5th level and you've been lucky so far and you've got an ability that's really working for you and you don't want to roll 6 dice when you go to 6th level, you don't have to. Because you're risking a breakdown when you roll. But again, risk reward. Kara has reached 3rd level and decides to throw 3d20 to see if her psychic power increase. Her rolls are 4, 8, and 20. The roll of 4 allows her to either raise her psi score in dream travel or roll randomly on a talent table. The roll of 8 yields no result, but the roll of 20 has some hard consequences. Kara rolls d6 and gets 3. It is randomly determined that 2 points are subtracted from her charisma and 1 from her intelligence. This reduces her potential to 2 as well. So again, because those have been reduced, now her psionic potential is going down. If something allows your ability score to go up or down, it's going to affect that potential. And eventually you might reach 0 and then you don't have a chance to increase anymore. So what do you think about psionics? Do you like them in general? Do you think they should be no room for them in fantasy? If you do like them, would you rather a class? Do you like them to feel more like spellcasters, so it's kind of a simpler system, so it's all the same? Or do you like something completely different like I made here? Let me know what you've done in the past, what you like, what you might try in the future, and let's have a conversation. Again, jump in and join the Discord. There is a link to it in the description. There's also a link to my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel that way. In any case, please like the video and share it around, and I'll talk to you soon.